Shalom, my emotional support humans. Today would have been Anne Frank's 90th birthday, so I thought this might be the appropriate time to explain why I chose to roast her on my new Netflix show, Historical Roasts, and address some of the criticism from around the world. Then, we talked to comedian Rachael Feinstein, who portrays Anne Frank on the show. So, long live the great and powerful Anne Frank. Life is hard. Let's get through it together.
Get ready for Jeff Ross. Do you have thick skin? Let's all come together.
Sunrise, sunset, sunrise, sunset, swiftly through the years. I'm singing Fiddler on the Roof. I'm channeling my Jewishness for this episode of the podcast. We're going to be talking about the historical roast of Anne Frank, taking on the critics a little bit. We're going to talk to Rachael Feinstein, who played Anne Frank on the Netflix show that I produced. It's been a hell of a journey. I'm really proud of the show. Surprised by some of the backlash. I'm joined by my cousin Ed, who was a writer on the show.
What's going on, buddy? How you doing?
I'm on top of the world, bro.
This show's been fun. I'm real happy about it.
The criticism from people that are really close to the Holocaust hurts. I'm not going to lie.
Of course.
But it's interesting how the only real pushback has been from the Jewish people. We roasted Martin Luther King and
no one cares.
Muhammad Ali and Freddie Mercury and Cleopatra and Abe Lincoln, and we talk about a lot of really supercharged issues, but yet for some reason Anne Frank remains the touchiest subject of all. It's only been about 80 years or something since the Holocaust. Fascinating. So we're going to talk to Rachael a little bit later, and I prepared a statement and some notes in response to criticism and some say outrage, mostly in Europe, from Dutch fans who live close to where Anne Frank's story took place, and some Holocaust survivors in Australia, and also, I believe, Abe Foxman, who used to run the Anti-Defamation League, all complained about the episode. Wonder if any of them actually watched it. Because if you watch it, you'll see how much care and thoughtfulness I and the writings and the producers put into it. Here at the Historical Roasting Society, we wanted to do a show about World War II, but we had a hard time picking a guest of honor. Hitler? Not a fan. Churchill? I couldn't afford the bar tab. FDR? Lame. Charles de Gaulle? Not even sure who she is. So I thought, who deserves the last laugh? Who deserves their moment in the sun? So why is tonight different from all other nights? Because tonight, our guest of honor is Anne Frank.
We put a lot of time into this episode, probably more than any other episode.
I would say all the other episodes suffered because we spent so much time trying to please the Jews. Yeah, man, it's been really cool. The feedback, I mean, I went by the billboards in Times Square and Los Angeles this week. I'm really proud of the show. It seems to be doing very, very well. It's trending on Netflix. Here we are 2 weeks into it. People keep writing about it, keep talking about it. I think we're really making an impact.
Yeah, I love it, man. I think that, to me, this is the greatest thing we've worked on. because I love history, and I love teaching people through comedy.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, this is the ultimate of both of those things.
See, I did it because I ran out of living people to roast. So I wanted to roast some historical figures.
Oh, man. It was been crazy in New York promoting this. It's been a lot of fun. We did the Tonight Show.
Yep.
You did The View.
Very unusual talking about Anne Frank on The View and The Tonight Show. Normally, this is not late-night comedy fodder.
Who would have thought? Your first Tonight Show appearance. Congratulations.
Oh, thanks. It was really fun. Really, really fun. Great to be back in New York for that.
Yeah.
30 Rock, classic television.
Yeah. And before we get into it, I also want to say it's been great on the road with you at Bumping Mics, man.
Ed's been coming with us on the tour.
Bethlehem, Atlantic City, Vegas.
We had so much fun. Shout out to all the fans and friends and family who came out to Atlantic City and Bethlehem. Man, I love those venues. And we were in Vegas this past weekend, Dave Attell and I doing our Bumping Mics. And Carrot Top came out, and Penn from Penn and Teller came out, and Mike Binder came out, and Ed and Julie were there, and Powell was there, and
it was cool, man.
Steve Ross from Artists and Athletes Alliance came out, and lots of fans. Big packed shows. So shout out to the Mirage for taking such good care of Dave and I.
You haven't lived till you have had a midnight dinner with Jeff, Dave, Carrot Top, and Penn.
And Yamanika, thank you for opening the shows. Love having her around.
She's the best. One of my new great friends. I think she's wonderful.
We rented a cabana at the Mirage Pool on Saturday, and Yamanika came over from her hotel with a complete bachelorette party. She brought my comedian friend Esther Steinberg was in Vegas for her bachelorette party, and we're hanging out at the cabana, and suddenly 8 wasted chicks come parading through the Mirage Pool, and that's when I texted Dave upstairs and said, "Dave, you better get down here. There's 8 Jewish drunk women."
And then he comes down dressed like the Unabomber.
Yeah. So Attell comes down to the pool wearing his jeans and hat and jacket. It's 95 degrees out. Only Dave.
Izzy Del Toro was there too, DT.
Israel Del Toro, who many of you might recognize from Bumping Mics and War. He was a big star of War. He just retired from the Air Force after 22 years, and we brought him on stage at Bumping Mics, and then we gave him a big shout out during the live show at the Mirage this week, and he was in the crowd when Dave and I left the stage and walked through the crowd. We put the house lights on, and we just make fun of whoever we see, and there was Izzy Del Toro. So Dave had him take a bow, and Dave said, "Izzy, how does Jeff look?" And Israel killed. He said, Jeff looks... He goes, "Oh, I look at Jeff, now I know what Bruce Willis would look like if he was pregnant." Which was especially funny because I was wearing Esther Steinberg's beach robe on stage. It was a wild, wacky weekend, so thank you to all the fans who've been coming out to the Bumping Mic shows. This weekend we'll be in Southern California at the Harrah's in Funner.
Yeah, you'll be at the Harrah's on the 15th and the Morongo on Friday the 14th.
Just in a few days.
Yeah. They say Friday the 13th, bad luck, and Friday the 14th means nothing at all.
Oh, okay. These shows, these are our last 2 shows for a while, then we have a break, I think until August or something.
Yeah.
Which is a crazy way to do a tour. But when you work with Dave Attell, things are always a little different.
Yeah, in August, you guys are going to be in Washington. In Bow, Washington, the Skagit Valley Casino. Go check that out for 2 nights on the 23rd and the 24th of August.
That'll be fun. I've never been up there.
That'll be great, man.
Bumping it out.
Bumping it out.
Bumping it out. Bump, bumping it out.
I love selling the merch for you guys. It's been a lot of fun. I get to meet so many fans of the podcast. They always, as soon as I sell them a shirt, they're like, "Wait, are you Ed?" It's great.
Well, then maybe this weekend we should introduce you during the show so everyone knows it's you. Mm-hmm.
It's been fun. I've been enjoying it. Got a couple photos myself.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's been great.
People love you, bud.
Dude, you got to come. And we got some Dynamite Bumping Mike's hats and posters. You guys signed it after the show.
I love
it's
it.
Super cool.
What could be a more Jewish segue than plugging our merch before we talk about the Diary of Anne Frank?
Oh, before we talk about Jews complaining.
You know, I've been a Jew my whole life. I grew up at a kosher catering hall in New Jersey. I love celebrations. And the reason we have celebrations is to commemorate the greatest things that happen in our lives, because not everything's always great. So you got to really commemorate the good stuff. By the way, shout out to OBB and Michael Ratner, who threw a great historical roast premiere party
So much fun.
that the whole cast came out to.
A whole bunch of people came out to, not just the cast. Kate Beckinsale.
Yeah, that was crazy.
Sarah Silverman was there.
That was really cool.
It
Special.
was a wonderful, wonderful day.
Larry Charles, one of my favorite director type people.
Man, just happier every time that man's around.
Yeah, so it's been a good time, and the show's been mostly well received.
Oh yeah.
We had a nice write up from the TV critic in the Israeli newspaper Haaretz, who said that he thought the show should be taught in schools. Even I don't even think it's that good.
But that was the goal before we even pitched it. You know, that was like, this should be something that could be taught in school.
I don't know where you went to school, but telling Hitler to eat a dick.
Well, I skipped a lot. I skipped a lot and watched Mel Brooks.
Read the Haaretz quote.
All right, so Niv Hadass from Haaretz. It's almost certain that many of those who complained haven't seen the Anne Frank roast. If they had, they would have discovered the final product is very far from demeaning the Holocaust. The opposite is true, in fact. This is a sensitive 30 minutes, compassionate, funny, and historically accurate. The roast does everything it can to do to honor the 6 million using humor. I swear I have no intention to tell people what to be offended by, but as far as I'm concerned, not only would I not ban showing the Anne Frank roast, I'd make it part of the curriculum in every school.
Wow.
That's cool.
Hey, I'll tell you, back to school. That's really nice.
Especially coming from Israel, man.
Yeah. I mean, the ironic is that newspaper, Haaretz, they originally wrote a negative article in the news section when the Anne Frank house complained about our show. And then they wrote the TV writer wrote a positive article. The Jewish Journal here in the States did the same thing. They wrote a positive one, then a negative one. What could be more Jewish than a newspaper changing its mind? And what we're accomplishing is creating conversation, right? Keeping Anne Frank's story going, alive. And that really was the ultimate goal. So, was there any other nice ones?
There was another nice one, John Michael Bond from Pace Magazine.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he says, Ross introduces the episode by fully acknowledging how horrific the concept it is to roast a child victim of racist genocide. He then explains the importance of humor reclaiming history, especially in the face of true tragedy. It is surprisingly human introduction given what we know about yet to come. And yet the Anne Frank episode is, dare I say, charming.
Oh.
Lest you worry, they give the Nazi the biggest moments. Rachael Feinstein's Anne Frank steals the show. Feinstein brings joy and energy to the character who shouldn't work. Rather than wallow in the misery of what happened to Frank, Feinstein plays her with curious and bright youth. It gives some of the best moments in the series.
Beautiful. We're going to talk to Rachael about how she took on and why she took on the role of Anne Frank in just a little while. It was a great cast. It was an almost all Jewish cast. We had Rachael playing Anne Frank.
No disrespect, but this is the most fucked up bat mitzvah ever.
The hilarious John Lovitz as President FDR.
But I'm not here to roast Anne Frank. I'm here to obliterate Adolf Hitler. Don't fret. The only thing you have to fear is FDR myself.
He was great, man.
We had Gilbert Gottfried play Hitler.
I almost didn't make it here tonight, but Satan gave me a day pass from hell.
People go, why would he do that? I called him up and offered him the role. I didn't even get the lure out. And he said, yes, I'll do it. Then he showed up at rehearsal. He brought his own armband and mustache.
Best Hitler since Mel Brooks.
Best Hitler. And we had Mindy Rickles, who was the daughter of the late, great roastmaster Don Rickles. She plays her dad as a representative of the U.S. military, the greatest generation. And she did a great job and basically roasted Hitler and Anne Frank and the whole thing the way Don Rickles would. Made me very happy.
I just want to say to you, Annie, on behalf of my lovely wife, Barbara, and I, my wife's Jewish, and she hides from me every night, too.
She was so great. And we had Fred Willard, a legendary comedian actor. He played God. I wanted there to be some representation of religion in this episode. And I love Fred Willard. And he did it really well.
Put yourself in my sandals for 5 minutes. I am trying to stop the Holocaust. Yeah. Follow me. Then I hear there's an earthquake in Argentina. So I'm trying to put that back together. Next thing I know, some nerds are over there splitting the atom. What was wrong with the original atom?
He did it really well. He tried to explain how the Holocaust happened, which obviously, we all know, is unexplainable. And it's important to keep telling the stories of the Holocaust. And that's really why I wanted to do this. Not everybody got it. So there was some negative criticism.
Yeah, Abe Foxman. He used to run the Anti-Defamation League.
Yes.
Netflix, he said that Netflix's series, Historical Roast, making fun of Anne Frank is a new hideous low for Holocaust-themed humor.
Is there a big trend in Holocaust-themed humor?
The defense of this humor is worse. Elie Wiesel once warned that the Holocaust trivialization is more dangerous to memory and lessons of the Holocaust than Holocaust denial.
You know, I met Elie Wiesel once early in my career.
Did you?
At a Jewish event. And he walked in late, and I made fun of him, and he was laughing so hard. He had a tremendous sense of humor. So why this guy, Abe Foxman, thinks he can just have Elie Wiesel from heaven pretend he didn't like it?
Yeah.
Elie Wiesel might have liked it.
Yeah. I loved Night.
That was a great book. He wrote a book called Night. Elie Wiesel.
Yeah. We also had 4 Holocaust survivors said in a joint statement with the Anti-Defamation Commission chairman that Netflix should take down the episode. Netflix has crossed all lines of moral decency by allowing these Jewish comedians to callously mock the memory of those who perished at the hands of the Nazis, the group said. There is nothing funny or amusing about a dictator responsible for the extermination of 6 million Jews or death of Anne Frank. Media giants have responsibility to remember the Holocaust appropriately and respectfully, not as material for a crass punchline.
All right, listen. Certain people are offended, threatening to boycott poor Netflix. Look, I admit the backlash hurts, even though I expected it. I wanted so much for people close to the stories of Anne Frank and the Holocaust to appreciate what I was doing, what we were doing. Mm-hmm. This wasn't done without thought. Countless people of all ages have told me they were moved by the episode. It's not possible, I guess, for some people out there to laugh at such things, and I understand that. I respect that. This is very sad for them, and I have nothing but sympathy for somebody whose brain lives in such a serious space. My comedy show, this Roast of Anne Frank, which it was a group effort, but I really pushed for this. I pushed my own team, I pushed my producers, and I pushed Netflix to do this. And to their credit, they've been very supportive.
Yeah.
But I need to be clear, this comedy show isn't for these survivors and their families. That's not who we made it for. And although some love it, and we do have 2 grandsons of survivors on the show. Eddie First's grandmother, he's one of the executive producers of the show. His grandmother is a survivor. Robbie Praw's grandparents are survivors.
Yeah. Not to mention our uncle liberated a concentration camp.
Right. For the U.S. Army.
Yeah.
Our show isn't for those people. It's not for the old people, the survivors. Our show, we made it for the rest of the world, the people in the 190 countries that Netflix sends it to in different languages. Many too young or too distant to have been directly affected by the Holocaust. Sadly, we also made the show for the many people who don't really know what the Holocaust was. Too many people I've spoken to about Anne Frank even confuse her with Helen Keller for reasons I don't quite get. As fake news evolves in a fake history, I thought it was important to keep Anne Frank's name and story alive. And that's why I did it. So sue me. Roasting is my platform, my lane. I wanted to expand it to a highway and highlight issues I care about. The Holocaust is one of them. How can we say never forget if people don't know the stories in the first place? Anne Frank is a strong way in for young people. We Jews can never get those years and lives back. We could only seek some kind of revenge through ridicule, as I once heard the great Mel Brooks put it. During the show, there were very few jokes at Anne's expense. I did say she invented the staycation.
I mean, well, you know, you got to do a couple.
You know, she was her high school's hide-and-seek champion 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
It mostly turned into a skewering not of Anne Frank, of Hitler, who was portrayed bravely and hilarious by our pal Gilbert Gottfried, which was actually my intention the whole time. Turn it into a roast of Hitler. But I only roast the ones I love, and it was Anne Frank I wanted in the seat of honor. Anne Frank is a legend. She's an icon, and by all accounts, she had a delightful sense of humor. Her book's funny.
Yeah.
She even wrote like dirty jokes that they never published that were found years and years and years later.
She could have been the next Joan Rivers.
Who knows? She would have needed an outlet for her creativity.
Yeah.
My critics in the Netherlands are right. Watching a comedy show is not a proper way to learn about Anne Frank. But not everybody can afford to visit the Anne Frank house in Amsterdam or a concentration camp in Europe. My show is merely designed to keep Anne Frank's story alive and make new people curious about her. It filled me with so much pride seeing one of our writers, Alex Duong, who's a young Vietnamese guy, take home a copy of the Diary of Anne Frank so he could better understand what she went through. This is how curiosity becomes knowledge, which then becomes positive change in the world. Maybe my roast will inspire others to make art about Anne Frank because, as Rachel says as she delivers Anne's rebuttal at the end of the show, why are there 500 documentaries about Hitler on Netflix and none about me? Great point, right?
Yeah.
So thank you to Netflix and all my fans who support and are streaming the show. I can't wait for you to see our Mother Teresa episode next season. Shalom. Jeff Ross, Jew comic.
I'm glad we did it, man. I'm proud of you for letting us do it, too.
Yeah, thank you.
And championing for it as well. It was just, it had to be that way, in my opinion.
What do you mean?
It's World War II. You can't not, if you're talking about history,
Right.
you can't talk about the most important moment of history in the past 100 years.
Right.
And then, but it's a roast, so it's got to be an honor.
Right.
And so who do you honor?
You can't honor Hitler.
No.
And you can't honor everybody else is flawed.
Yeah.
Anne Frank died. She's not flawed. No. She's an angel.
Yeah, who doesn't love Anne Frank? Well, some people. I loved it. I think it was great. I'm real proud to be a part of it, man.
Great, man. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Hey, Jeff, we got one Anne Frank themed touchy subject in the news.
Touchy subject.
I love that she's still in the news.
This is great. All right. Local news here. Those Ocean County teens who got in trouble playing beer pong with those cups shaped like a swastika and giving the Zig Heil.
Wait,
salute.
what happened?
Do you remember these? Like a bunch of high school students were at a keg party and they were playing beer pong, and then they made a swastika out of the beer pong, out of the cups.
Gosh.
And then Zig Heiled over it. This is in Ocean County in Newport Beach.
This type of humor is inappropriate.
Well, they posted it online and they got a bunch of trouble. Trust me. And Anne Frank's stepsister, Eva Schloss, went and talked to them.
See?
So she was in town, and then she went and said hi. Eva Schloss is her stepsister. Her family, except for her mother, were killed in the Holocaust. And her mother married Otto Frank after the Holocaust. Two grieving families.
Trying to get that big diary money going.
The students apologized to Mrs. Schloss and said they meant no harm. Eva also has written 3 books, but none of them have reached the popularity of the Diary of Anne Frank.
Wow. Well, not many kids today really know who Anne Frank is, and that's a shame. Kids today could use a lesson on how to be more quiet.
I think it's unfair. Those kids get to meet Anne Frank's stepsister. We made this whole episode.
Yeah.
Nothing from Eva. Radio silence.
My pal Rachael Feinstein is a hilarious comedian. Bumping Mike's fans will have spotted her at the end of episode 1 when she came on stage with Nikki Glaser and Amy Schumer. Right before the episode came out, we talked to Rachael about why she took on the role. I've talked to her since, and she's getting a lot of love for her portrayal of Anne Frank, and also a lot of creepy direct messages from horny Hebrew schoolers that like seeing her in the Anne Frank outfit. So you never know where feedback is going to come from. I love this woman. She's a great friend, a great comedian. You might recognize her from her roles in Trainwreck and I Feel Pretty and HBO's Crashing, and her starring role in the Amy Schumer-produced stand-up special on Comedy Central called Only Whores Wear Purple. I love this person. Here's our interview with Rachael Feinstein. Welcome to Thick Skin with Jeff Ross. Life is hard. We're getting through it together. Got a real good pal over. So I said, Rachael, please come hang out in the bunker for a little while. Let's catch up and talk about all kinds of fun stuff. If you don't know Rachael Feinstein, did I say it right?
You did.
I've known you most of your career, and it's one of those great mysteries, how to pronounce Feinstein. Is it?
A lot of people say Feinstein, but I never correct them. But so
Rachael
that's how this has
Feinstein.
happened.
I know. You have to realize that I'm super. I'm Jeff Lifschultz.
Yes.
So I'm very cognizant of people's showbiz names and how you would commit to your actual name. When in fact you could.
It was obviously a grave mistake.
All I know is I did a couple of TV shows, Star Search, and Ed McMahon kept mispronouncing Lipschultz, Jeff Lifeshitz, this week's challenger, Jeff Lipschitz. And on the flight home, I was like, and it messed me up every time. And on the flight home, I was like, you know what? I really think I need to either quit comedy or change my name for show business. And
I was going to change mine to Rachel Louise, but there was a Carrie Louise, this other comedian, and so I didn't do it. But Jeff Ross sounds pretty smooth.
Yeah, thanks.
Is Louise your middle name?
It's my middle name.
So that's what he did.
Yeah. My grandma used to sing to me, and I'm not trying to turn anybody on, but eyes so brown, cheeks so round, lips like cherry wine. The sweetest girl I know in town is Rachael Louise Feinstein. So now that everyone has a raging erection.
Well, you did just marry a fireman, so you are. It's working. Aren't firemen the most sought after type of man behind like astronaut? And when you're a little kid, you're always like, I want to be a fireman, right?
Mm-hmm. I always thought they were hot, but I never had any idea I would end up with a fireman. Yeah, I mean, I like any uniform, even a UPS uniform. I don't care. Like a uniform does it for me.
But you are so funny and perfectly suited to take on the legacy of the great Anne Frank. I asked Rachael to play Anne Frank on Historical Roast episode on Netflix. We'll get that in a second. We'll get to that in a second. But I do owe you a big thank you for appearing on Bumping Mics with me and Dave. at the end of episode 1. You jumped up there. I didn't give you any warning. You were adorable and funny. You came up there with your comedy sisters, Amy Schumer and Nikki Glazer. It was a great finale to the Friday night episode of Bumping Mike. So thank you, Rachel.
It was really fun because Amy was just like, we're going around the corner. We're going on Jeff's show. And we were just, I was like, what? I don't have any makeup on. So yeah, me and Nikki just stopped at the top of those stairs at the cellar. And we're just like trying to put like lipstick blush on our cheeks. And
are you serious?
Yeah, because I was like, it's going to be on camera. Like as a woman, you're thinking about like what outfit you would have chosen. You're adjusting tittage. There's a lot that goes into it. You're just like, I can't suddenly be on camera. It was like terrifying. And then you're thinking, because it's a Rose situation, what are they going to say and whatever, like there's so much happening so fast. But,
were you nervous Dave and I would make fun of you?
I mean, I knew it was all with love, but as a woman, there's certain jokes, again, I start all my sentences like that as a woman, but
Me too.
There's just like certain jokes you fear, you can, and the rest of them are fine. So you have a million things running through your head. I mean, you just want it to be cool. And then it's so insane how many people are watching this. Like, insane amounts of tweets.
Oh, people have been telling you they've been seeing it.
Everybody. And I went by the firehouse and like a couple of the firemen were like, whoa, you're on Bumping Mike. Like,
really?
And when I go in there, I'm just like the captain's wife, like everybody like straightens up, like nobody calls him Pete. They always alarm when I'm like, is Pete here? Like, Cap? Yeah, of course, Cap is coming in,
Oh.
And they were all like, wait a second, excuse me, I need to bother you, but there's a fireman accent, by the way. Right. There's like a New York fireman accent. It's like only firemen have it,
I love
they pronounce it like firefighter. Yeah. And they were like, I'm sorry to bother you, man, but have you been on Bumping Mike's by any chance on Netflix?
Really? Awesome.
Oh yeah, they're crazy fans, and they had all these questions about Gilbert Gottfried and and that insane scene and the guy and how it happened and how I ended up on it. And I'm like, it's just like typical Jeff. It's just like this, all these insane things are happening all at the same time. And like, I think you told me Gilbert wasn't even supposed to be there that night, right? But he was. Was that how it happened? Or he dropped by or something?
No, Gilbert came for the early show. He came to introduce Dave and I, which... was arguably the funniest thing in history. And then Dave and I attempt to follow him for half an hour. And then Gilbert comes on again at the end and closes the show. And in the between, Hassan Minhaj and Bob Saget, and we go to the trip to a deli and all this. But honestly, Gilbert was one of the first people I asked. To come and be part of Bumpin' Mike's. And when we ask people, we don't always formally ask them. Sometimes it's like with you where we just invite our friends to the show.
Right.
Like you got no more screen time than my Aunt Donna.
Which I really love about you. I love that Donna had a healthy chunk.
It's not a celebrity thing. It's a friendship thing. So from the bottom of my heart and Dave's alleged heart, we thank you for being part of our first episode of Bumping Mike.
It turned out to be so cool. But it's fascinating. It's like it's fascinating the questions people ask about it, because like I don't know what people see when they're seeing it, because like I know Jeff and all these random comics and all these strange animals that we hang out with. I mean, we're also there's so many ludicrous people. It's hard to see them through somebody else's eyes. And then your friendship with Attell, and I've been watching you guys jump on stage at the Cellar. And so it's so interesting to see and cool to see just like, I'm like, what do people see when they see this weird night and this, and all these people coming on and they really fell in love with it in an insane way. Like I got so many tweets about that, about that Bumping Mike's special. Yeah. This guy at the deli in my neighborhood who says strangely insulting things to me.
Wait, what do you mean? Why?
Like, he doesn't mean to, but
Does he know you're a comedian?
No, he has no idea. But just one day he told me, I was like, he's had me like gently weeping leaving the deli before, but unintentionally, but he's a big Bumping Mike's fan. I left the deli once and he was like, why do you have skin like this? You don't take vegetable or something like that? And I'm like, when I take vegetable, like, fuck you. And I'm like, I just have acne, He's like, what's the problem? He wanted me to answer for his own insult. Like, don't just insult me. Make me, defend what you think are my physical imperfections. Yeah. Jeez. And he didn't mean to insult me. Like, he's genuinely concerned for me. That he's like, why do you have this thing on your face? You have a lot of those things. And I was like, yes, I have a lot of these. Like, you don't take vegetables. I was like, I take a lot of vegetables.
Take vegetables.
And he's like, you don't take water. I was like, I take water, And then
he's trying to upsell you vegetables and water at the deli.
And then one day I came and he's like, bump Mike. I had no idea what he was screaming at me.
Get out of here.
I swear to God. He's like, I love the comedies. I've always liked the I can't tell how offensive this accent is. I apologize. It's also, I'm coming in and out of it, but it's how he speaks.
Nondescript deli
it's
man.
how he speaks. And so, but he was like, I love the comedy. And I was like, oh yeah. And he was like, you come. He meant on stage, you come. And I was like, yes, I come.
Yeah.
From time to time.
No, he's trying to sell you a comb. He said, and maybe it's not such a bad idea.
Yeah, he was like, bump Mike. He was so happy. Yeah.
I really feel like bumping mics transcends culture, even language on some level.
And people always have a different question, like my friend Lisa Kaplan that I grew up with, like the girl I knew since my childhood. She comes up and she's just like, so explain to me, Gilbert's marriage. I have to know everything. Is that beyond really? They all get a different question,
Gilbert's wife, Dara, is in the back. She's sitting next to him.
Yeah.
She's sitting next to him during the show.
Yeah.
They have a very, very special relationship, very, very healthy relationship.
Yeah, she's very cool and she's a hot, sexy blonde. And so she was like, Gilbert, bag that. I'm like, he sure did.
I think Gilbert's hot.
Yeah, Gilbert's hot too, but Gilbert's like all comedians. We're a handful. And she was like asking me about your friendship with Dave and how it works, and I'm like, he's the extrovert, Dave's the introvert. It's every possible pun you could come up with. Yeah, she wanted to know, but everybody has a different question, and it's so interesting to see. But whatever it is, people loved it.
Dave and I have a very special relationship. I always say he's the funny one, and I'm the other one. He's the negative, I'm the positive. It's like a yin yang. But I only think that really because I hear it from other people. But when it was just him and I doing it, and we didn't really talk to fans about it, we just sort of did it at 1 a.m. for fun, and we just go our separate ways. I didn't understand what the spark was. Like, it doesn't make sense to me, but I can tell that we're killing, and then I can tell that if we do a bunch of shows in a row, that we're like it's like a band. Like, we're just in sync. 1, 2, 3, 4. Boom, 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 boom. It's like the Ramones.
And they're both, I feel like you guys are both these unspoken sides of each other, like some unexpressed side of each other. So it's very satisfying to watch you guys together.
Thanks. We're back doing more tour dates. Roastmastergeneral.com. Go get some tickets. We're coming to a city probably not too near you, but you never know. It's tough committing to tour dates with Dave because he won't go to Miami. And he only wants to go to places that let him smoke in the elevators. Casinos.
And you guys got to be able to smoke on the plane on the way there as well.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, he's such a strange cat.
And then you guys both have a certain generosity that's very different from each other. It's like Attell will, I mean, he once a kid threw a bottle at him at the cellar and he bailed him out of jail and took him to breakfast,
Really?
And
so
he was
crazy.
drunk and he threw something at Dave, and then he bailed him out and took him out for a big breakfast and, just tried to help him out. That's, and you guys both have that thing about you. Like he'll give a guy and anybody we pass like a 20 on the street, like anybody looks like they're suffering from it. There's no questions about whatever their specific.
He gives a lot of money away. I've
he
seen
really
him do
did.
that.
I used to bartend. He would come in and he would put like, $40 on the bar, and I wanted to do stand-up, and I was, like, so nervous around him. It was like, Dave Attell,
Where was this?
At Caravas, that Carrie Caravas' bar, her brother's bar, and he would come in, and I would ramble to him about stand-up, and, like, which is the most annoying thing if you're a comedian, and he would just patiently listen to my what did I know about comedy? I wasn't even doing it yet, just running my dumb mouth, and he would put a couple 20s at the bar every time, and it was so lovely. Yeah. And Jeff gave me my first spot on stage, like my first real professional show. I'm just rambling on.
I love that.
Ask me about any of these
It makes me so happy that you remember.
I remember. Can I tell the story of when we first met? Okay. So I was at Caroline's, and it was like this club.
Do you want to tell him how long ago, or you don't want to tell him?
I mean, it was so long ago. Let's just say that I'm in the winter of my life and leave it at that.
You're not, though, but it was. But it was you started very young.
Yeah, I did start very young.
If you listen 21. To Game of Thrones, winter is coming.
Yes.
So that's great.
Exactly.
You're on.
So it was like it was one of those shows where you have to bring 20 people to perform. That's how you get your professional spot on a real comedy show. And I was nannying full time and bartending, and my family was there to come watch me try comedy. And then Jeff came to the show. They would have like a real, celebrity host or somebody close the show. And I think you might have been hosting it. Anyway, I remember my outfit because that was like the first time I met somebody in the business, like a real person. I was wearing these absurd like pleather snakeskin pants, like just unacceptable outfit. Like I had no idea how to dress. And I wore some Paula Poundstone blazer with these weird heinous snakeskin pants. I remember Jeff came up and you were like, "Hey kid," And I was like, "He calls people kid. He's in the business." And then I did the set, and I had a pretty good set. And you were like, "You're talented, kid." And you were like, "Give me a call, and I'll get you a spot in like a real show instead of, And you gave me your number, and I remember I was like, I called you from the nanny job, and I was like violently shaking the next day, like I'm going to call him. And then I was like so scared and nervous, And I remember you answered the phone. I remember you were on the treadmill, and I was like, is that what like celebrities do? They talk on the treadmill.
I was so far from a celebrity at that point.
But to me, you were a comedian that had been on television.
Right. Famous enough to own a treadmill. So.
Had I been on? Okay.
You definitely been on television, and you were like. And I said something to you, like, I was like, "I'm the girl from the comedy show." I don't know. It was some mangled mess. And you were like, just so relaxed. You're like, "Yeah, I'm on the treadmill." I can hear you. And you were like, "Listen, Friday night, Boston Comedy Club. I got you a spot. Like, show up at 8, And you did it. You did what you said you were going to do.
Love that.
It's so rare, like just somebody just says it, remembers it.
How did that one go? And then from there, you were downtown. Everybody knew you.
And that was like the first spot where I did a real professional spot at a real comedy club. I got an audition there.
I like that you were doing comedy that my relatives, like, I felt like we were kindred spirits. I was doing jokes about New Jersey and the catering business, that I would drop like, Jewish accents and stuff. And it's not that you were really doing Jewish jokes, but there was something, I hate this normally, but it applies like old soul-y about the act you were doing. And it felt like the act a little bit like I started doing and was evolving from it. I was like, oh, all right. Here's somebody, not only were you funny, but I was like, you might come in handy. Like, I'm going to get like a job at a country club in front of a bunch of Jews, and I'm going to have to do an hour, and I'm only going to want to do 45 minutes, and I'm going to need someone like me, but not as good, to go on first.
That's the most you could hope for in life. Isn't that to come in handy, That's what our parents said when they came over for a better life, like our grandparents. Yeah, well, let's see, you grow up and you come handy, Like,
you become handy. Well, whatever. No, it just seemed like, I don't know. It seemed like a good person.
Well, you really helped me out, and you did it, and then
I love this.
And each little thing I do, like if I got my first spot on television, or my first half-hour special, and you'd be like, "This is big." And even if you were at a different place in your career, where that wasn't a big to you, you were really excited that I was doing it, which is like, it's so you, because you're, just the way you always have all this family around you, and like those little moments in somebody else's life, those kind of traditions and like little pillar moments. Like, it was so nice from the outside that you'd be that genuinely excited for, something that wasn't a big deal for you anymore. You'd be like, this is your first time on television. Like, what are you going to do? What are you going to wear? It's just like so lovely,
See, and now it keeps going, because now you're starring in an episode of my Netflix show, and I was equally as excited that you were doing it. And it was really tricky, because do you play Anne Frank as a teenager? Do you get a teenager to try to make her sympathetic? But who's going to be interesting doing jokes as a teenager when you're surrounded by FDR and Hitler and God? Like, you don't know enough, but I feel like you portrayed her, and for people who aren't following yet, it's like it's a celebrity roast of Anne Frank. I know. Where Hitler and FDR and me roast Anne Frank in a loving way. And I go, well, we're thinking about it. And I'm like, the more I thought about it, if John Lovitz is playing FDR and Gilbert Gottfried's playing Hitler and Fred Willard's playing God and the Roastmaster General's talking about Anne Frank has to be played by somebody who can handle her shit, who's got some like experience in comedy and life to pass on to the next generation of people that need to know the story of Anne Frank. And at the end, we toast to not just the people we lost in wars and life, but to the living who need our help the most. And you really handled it, and you really embodied her in a way that, I don't know, I think it's high art. I think you did it. You played it like respectfully, but it was funny, and you had to go on after Gilbert Gottfried roasted you as Hitler.
It's me, Hitler. Hold your applause. Anne Frank, I've been looking for you.
And this is Rachel's rebuttal as Anne Frank at the roast of Anne Frank.
You tried to break us, but today the Jewish people are thriving more than ever. In fact, guess what, Hitler? You're being played by a Jew right now. And it's the loudest, most annoying Jew we could possibly find.
And I remember I sent you the script, and I said, is this crazy? I just wanted your opinion. I wanted to see if you would even acknowledge me before I asked you.
I mean, I had no idea that you were going to ask me. I thought you were just sharing me the script, this thing that you did, you know?
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, yeah, that's hysterical. It's brave and amazing. And, you know, I also thought it was cool that you learn about Anne Frank, you know, because I learned all these things I didn't know or remember because I hadn't read the story. And then, I mean, I'd read this book when I was a kid, but I hadn't remembered the story.
Right.
And certainly not the amount of detail that you explained.
Yeah.
So
You forget,
yeah.
Even people on the writing staff were confusing Anne Frank and Helen Keller.
Yeah.
Like young people, it's all a blur.
Yeah.
And I thought this is an important story to tell or retell. So people, you say never forget, but people forget or they get it mixed up and they don't know the details. And, you know, they want to like ban Anne Frank Halloween costume. Some kid tried to dress up as Anne Frank, and I'm like, let the kid be Anne Frank.
Yeah.
Why does it have to be so sacred that you can be Abe Lincoln?
Yeah. I mean, what's wrong with Anne Frank? She's a great person.
Yeah.
Yeah, why shouldn't you be her?
Yeah.
Also, you want her to be remembered as she was, not as you want the story to be told of what happened in the Holocaust, but in terms of her and herself, you know, she was also a person before she died in this violent way. She was this creative, funny, irreverent, growing young woman that should have been allowed to, you know, quietly finish her own life. So the least we could do is keep learning about her in life as well, you know, and not only associating with her like unacceptable murder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She very well could have ended up being a performer because she needed an outlet.
Yeah.
She was a really good writer. I mean, I've been looking at the book again in preparation for writing that Anne Frank roast, and it's uncanny how talented she was. So the fame is earned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In a weird way. It's not just another kid's diary.
No,
she was also
a
talented,
writer,
talented young woman with insights about sex and parenting and philosophy. And if you read it, there's some dirty jokes in there that they uncovered later on.
I know her father talks about how like he realized he didn't know her in all these ways, you know, and like how people, especially young teens, once they're growing up and going through those phases, how little parents really know what's happening inside of their minds. And she was so funny. Yeah, she was sarcastic and funny, and she had these odd takes on things and intuitions about stuff. So, yeah, I mean, if people can keep learning about her, then why not? But of course, I bravely told you, like, absolutely do it. Yeah, this is a thing that should be done for a variety of reasons. And they're like, oh, you want to do it? I'm like, okay.
So
it
now,
was scary. Now,
so now you're finally, you got the gig. You were working on the script. You come to L.A. Thank you for coming to L.A. to tape it. And you're in hair and makeup and wardrobe, and you start to like transform into a grown Anne Frank. Like, what did that feel like?
I mean, it was one of the weirdest nights of my entire life, you know? Like, I was, like, FaceTiming with my brother, and he's like, Jesus Christ, your life, what the fuck, you know? And I'm like, do you want to see the set? And he's like, what in God? Like, yeah, I mean, you know, he's just like, he was just laughing, because he was like, you know, he was saying, like, God, I never know what is going to come out of your mouth when you call me, you know? Like, he was reminding me how, like, I used to call him when I was starting on the road, and I would just ask him the weirdest questions, like how to open like a certain document, or I'd be like, where is Des Moines, you know? I just call my brother and ask him, you know. And he said
he's a nice guy.
He's a mensch.
I hung out with him at your wedding.
Yeah, he said. He said that when you laughed, or like when you were laughing at his toast, it was like it made him feel so incredible. You know, he's just like, oh, this moment would only happen. You know, like he's like, this is insane. So yeah, he's funny, lovely, sweetheart. But he was just like, it was another one of these. He's like, I always pick up the phone because I know it's going to be interesting, even if it's a hassle. Like, because it was like the first checks I would ever get. Remember when you got checks, and I never had a bank account, and I'd run to my brother's work in Midtown and write them over to him, and he would just like hand me the cash with this weirdly amused expression, you know. And then he's like, and now this, like, I'm Anne Frank. Do you want to see the like me and Hitler? And he's like, yes, of course, yes, you know. But it was just such an insane night. I mean, of course, I also felt, you know, really nervous, because it's easy to tell somebody else they're doing something brave and to absolutely do it. And then when they ask you to, you're like, you know, it's scary, because you want to be interpreted correctly. You want people to know why you did it, and, you know, and why you think it's a good thing to do. And, you know, I want to be liked, you know, like I'd like to say, like, I don't care what people think, but I like read every comment under my video. You know, you shouldn't do that. There's some guy named Mr. Twat Waffles that hates me. Why do I care? His name is Mr. Twat Waffles, but I read all my comments, and then I'll like, just spiral, you know. Some guy named Mr. Twat Waffles said I had a bird head, and now I'm like, I don't even know what a bird head is, but I somehow look in the mirror now and I'm like, do I have a bird head? Like, you know.
It's all right. His twat's shaped like waffles, so he's got a lot worse things going on.
But I mean, like, I care what people think, and I want people to think, you know, I'm a nice girl, and then I'm doing things for the right reasons. I still remember when my grandma would be like, that's very vulgar if I said a certain thing. Like, she'd be like, when you mimic somebody, you must do it with a sense of compassion. Otherwise, it's very vulgar. There's a vulgarity to it. And I kept wondering, what would my grandma think, you know? But she made a lot of jokes. She made irreverent, weird, dark jokes. So I like to think that she would think that's good. I mean, that's how the Jews got over all this horror and darkness, is mocking the absurdity and insanity of it all. So I want people to understand that.
That's great. That's great. I think you make me think that maybe a lot of people won't even, sensitive people will watch the show, might not laugh, but will enjoy the fact that we're telling the story.
Yeah.
And they'll go, oh, an Anne Frank show. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
You know how you always hear growing up, it's good for the Jews. You know, the guy's an alcoholic that beats up kids, but he's Jewish. I'm voting for him. It's good for the
Jews. You know. Yeah, I mean, I think I wish they could have seen after the show. Like we all went out and had a beer, and then you dropped me back at the hotel, and you were just talking about the way you were editing it, and the ways that you know, why you chose to make the set the way that you did, and why you made all these different choices, and to let it, like an adult play Anne Frank. I remember you saying like that felt fair, like we got to give her the same shot that everybody else had. And I wish
it's a variety show.
Exactly. Yeah. And that big conversation between God and Hitler, a conversation and Anne that would never be had. But it's like, it was so kind of surreal just to see all these voices. Like, why do these things happen? And letting people speak up for themselves. And I wish people could hear that conversation in the car of like how Jeff does something and how you cared about it and wanted to honor the history of it, you know, and I know there'll be people that misinterpret it and why it was done, but I hope people will also see the spirit of that conversation. I wish they could hear like how important it was to you, you know. And
well, I mean, it was profoundly important because I always start from the funny place. Like, what's the most funny, crazy thing? Oh, well, let's roast, prisoners in jumpsuits. Like, and then what you learn from it is all what everyone else enjoys. But for me, it's the sheer delight of getting to make Anne Frank jokes and Holocaust jokes and being able to call Gilbert up and go, all right, here's your mustache, here's your swastika. I mean, I was a little kid and I was talking about this with Larry Charles not too long ago, and he did the same thing, and we would draw swastikas on our notebooks as kids just because we could.
Yeah.
And then we'd cross them out real quick. It was just, I was just sort of celebrating in my childish brain the fact that I grew up in a free country.
That's
we had freedom of speech, and I wanted to be able to take a big swing that no one else I'd seen do in comedy, which was an Anne Frank themed anything. It was always like Springtime for Hitler was a big influence on me, and Hogan's Heroes was like always a kick.
Yeah.
These like toying with Nazi comedy, and everyone's obsessed with World War II and the Nazis, and the other World War II figures seemed either played out or not that interesting to me, and it's hard for me to walk out there and be an expert on Winston Churchill, but when you just make it about a Jewish teenager, I don't know, like I feel like I could at least somehow find a way to make that funny, because maybe I was uniquely qualified to talk about it just because it was torture for me in Hebrew school, and I learned it all painstakingly slow, and I really, I suffered too.
Well, it's also like a roast is an honor, and you don't want to honor Hitler.
That's a good
like that's wrong.
Right.
And so like who was the one good person from World War II?
Right.
Like even FDR, he showed up too late, like Truman dropped the bomb, so it's like who was the good? Anne Frank is the only redeemable human being from that whole disaster.
Yeah.
Right.
You're right. It's ludicrous that it happens. And that's why you have to laugh at it's hilariously ludicrous that any of these things happen. And if you point out how absurd it is that anybody would want to do these things, then I feel like that's a good angle to begin with, to hold all that up in some light and just be like, why would anyone want to do any of it? I mean, it's all so insane and avoidable and absurd. So I feel like you need to kind of show people that by showing them this conversation, and then people at home can learn about her, these weird, odd facts. And I mean, it was scary to walk out there.
What's something about Anne Frank you didn't know?
Well, first of all, I didn't know about the people that housed her. I should have remembered this, but I didn't know that the people that housed her was how do you say the name again?
Miep Geis.
Miep Geis, yeah. Yeah, I didn't know anything about them, and I thought it was cool that you talked about that and them risking their lives, and, all the people that helped the Jews, too. It's good to remember those people and those friendships and stuff,
Yeah, nobody makes it alone,
Yeah, or their sister had a diary too. I mean, that's really interesting too.
That was crazy.
That was insane.
That's
I had
what
no
I'm
idea
saying.
her sister was a diarist.
Anne Frank was a great writer, and her diary was the reason the book was great. Her writing.
Yeah, I mean, and I think when I was a kid, because like you said, the same reason you drew the swastikas and stuff. I didn't really experience a lot of anti-Semitism, so to me it would be funny when somebody would say things about Jews.
Yeah.
I remember going on the road for the first time, and this guy picking me up to the south, and it was this weird airport drive, and he goes, you from New York City? I drove a tractor through that town once, which, first of all, why? Supply and demand issue with that activity.
1735?
And then he goes... And then he goes, it was crawling with Jews. They were all out celebrating their holiday, Rosh Hashanah. And he said it like it was the most terrifying campfire story that had ever been told. Jews celebrating Rosh Hashanah, as he called it. But I remember thinking it was hysterical. It was hilarious that he was like, that he feared, that thought that was like a strange, dark activity. It's us just, dipping apples in honey in the Jewish New Year, and it's ludicrous, but hysterical that people fear that,
Yeah.
But I'd also never dealt with it like so directly. So I always thought it was funny and kind of exciting if somebody said an anti-Semitic thing. It's like, now your day has started. Somebody said some crazy, and what people think Jews are up to is funny, like that they think we meet and that we're collectively up to things. And
We are.
yeah.
Don't think it.
Roasts on Netflix.
How you liking this rain?
We did that. Oh, well. Thank you for doing it, Rach, and thanks for coming by. I'm sorry you didn't get to do Conan tonight. You have to go back tomorrow, but we got you instead.
It worked out, though. It worked out.
Go see Rachael perform. She's always in New York. What's your summer look like? Are you going to be out on the road? Are you going to be home? Are you still doing your podcast? Like, what's going on?
I am doing my podcast with me and Amy Schumer, Bridget Everett, Keith Robinson. It's called 3 Girls, 1 Keith. It's on Spotify.
That is nuts.
We basically just trash Keith at Amy's apartment. There's really no plan.
Wow.
But we're going to do another season of the podcast that's coming out on March 12th. And then I'm going on the road a bit to some casinos and MGM in Springfield, some random gigs. Yeah, I'll be hurling my body around the country and stuff. And then this is going to come out. And I can't even imagine. Like, it'll be very interesting to see what happens.
Nothing. I know nothing.
What do you think? Do you think people will get it?
I think they will. I think there's been so many Anne Frank jokes forever.
Mm-hmm.
Like Family Guy rips on Anne Frank. They rip on her in the Bumping Mics,
Yeah.
I think that people are going to be less offended than we think they are, to be honest with you. And it's done as
done the
classy
classy way,
as it can be.
I'm offended by people that are always offended.
It's so obnoxious. Some people just like being outraged. I guess
Yeah.
I try to think about it like, when I got married, everybody was like telling me what I should and shouldn't do. And I'm like, and then one of my aunts said, somebody's going to be offended. But you know what? They enjoy being offended. So great. Some people enjoyed shrimp that evening. Some people didn't like the meal. Some people thought it was a great evening because they could criticize everything and say what they were offended. Who cares?
I'll bump to that.
If no one's offended, then we did a bad job.
Yeah, somebody's going to be offended. But I think a lot of people will see the spirit in it. You're right. Yes, that's what I think now.
I think you're right. Well, I will raise a glass then.
L'chaim.
L'chaim. To Anne Frank. This was really fun.
It was. Thanks for coming by, Rachel.
Thanks for having me. Life in the attic sucked. It really did. But I took my small diary and I made it larger than life. I made dirty jokes. I mocked things. And through all that pain, I still laughed. Because that's what the Jews do. We never stop talking. And we make jokes and we tell our stories. And sometimes we write them down. And because I did, now you all know my story. And if you want to know more, buy my book or email Netflix and ask them why there are 5,000 documentaries about Hitler and none about me. And let's remember the people that were gone too soon. And also, and perhaps most urgently, let's think about the living, the ones that need us now. Please raise a cup with me and say it with me. L'chaim!
L'chaim!
To life!
To life!
I love you all!
Yeah.
And Hitler, eat a dick!
That was great. I love Rachel. And know what else is great? We had a nice, lovely day in New York right when the show came out. The day the show came out, it was you, me, Rachel, and Yamanika. And it was a beautiful day to spend celebrating the show coming out.
It's lovely. And she's getting a lot of, obviously Yamanika's getting a lot of love for her portrayal as Harriet Tubman on the Abe Lincoln episode. And Rachel's also getting a lot of love mixed in with some of the criticism. But she's also getting a lot of love in her direct messages from some horny Hebrew schoolers.
So, I guess that was all bound to happen.
I guess that's bound to happen when you dress like Anne Frank.
Well, check out Historical Roast. It is out on Netflix. It is trending. My stepbrother Hector sent me a picture, #1 trending. He was very
Love
proud.
it. That's really cool.
Yeah, so go check it out. Keep watching
And
it.
Frank is hip, baby.
Yeah, man. The Anne Frank episode, the Muhammad Ali episode's my personal favorite. Don't forget to catch that one. Bumping Mike's coming back at you this weekend on June 14th. We'll be in Cabazon, California. Palm Springs, baby. The Morongo Casino. And on the 15th, we'll be in Funner, California at the Harrah's Resort in SoCal. In August 23rd and 24th, you'll be in Bow, Washington, the Skagit Valley Casino. And on October 4th and 5th, you'll be in Huntington, New York, the Paramount Theater. October 19th, Prior Lake.
Forget those Huntington shows. They're going to be sold out in minutes.
Yeah.
That's Dave's hometown. We
Yeah.
already added a second show.
It's such a cool theater.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've never been inside, but I was up around it once, and I was just like, I got to go see a show.
A friend of mine went to see a band there, and he sent me a picture. We were up on. They had a picture of me and Dave up on the Jumbotron before the show.
That's awesome. I love that. October 19th, you're going to be in Prior Lake, Minnesota, the Mystic Lake Casino.
Yeah.
And October 20th, you're going to be in Winnipeg at the Club Region Event Center.
We're really doing this, huh?
You're all over the place, man. This is a real tour.
I agreed to this?
Yeah, you agree. You agreed to go to Prior Lake, Minnesota. It's not my fault. In a couple of weeks, you're going to be at Clusterfest or Roast Battle. That's going to be cool as hell.
By the way, Comedy Central produces this Clusterfest up in San Francisco. I went last year. I did a show at Wu-Tang. This year, we're doing Roast Battle. We got great judges, Neil Brennan, Chris Redd from SNL, and Whitney Cummings, plus some great battles. Historical roast writer and roast battle queen Robin Tran versus Earl Skakel back in the ring.
Oh, man, that is a perfect matchup if I've ever heard one.
It's going to be amazing.
It's going to be
Clusterfest, June 21st.
And that's the Friday night, the late night show. Also, Roastmasters Invitational, Montreal Comedy Festival.
Has that been announced yet? I think it has.
Yeah, man.
We're going back to Montreal for some roast battling.
It's going to be cool as hell. That is roasters from all over the world are going to be roasting in this.
It's going to be an amazing bracketed tournament.
It's going to be so cool. So if you're if you're a Montreal Comedy Festival, that's going to be 3 or 4 nights of entertainment for you right there.
Yep, it's going to be really epic.
Also, we love your feedback from the podcast. Rate and review us on iTunes and check us out on Spotify. Subscribe and comment on the YouTube page if you want to watch the podcast. And hit up Jeff on Cameo. He'll make you a video. Still rocking and rolling with those, man. I love that you do that. That is a perfect thing to give to your friend. If they're a Jeff Ross fan, a personal message from Jeff. It doesn't get much better than that.
Cameo.com.
Email Thick Skin with Jeff Ross if you want to say hi. Instagram Thick Skin with Jeff Ross. Twitter @ThickSkinCast. And you can pick up your emotional support human t-shirt in honor of our show on Jeff Ross, roastmaster.com on the merch page, or just go to jeffrossmerch.com and you can find it there. It is very exciting to have merch for the podcast out.
My emotional support humans, I love every one of you wherever you are. Hold your head high and laugh. Love you. Shalom.